Hi everybody, and welcome to our complimentary webinar, which is brought to you today in partnership with Cognigy, Auscontact's national gold sponsor. The session today is entitled The State of Conversational AI. In the spirit of reconciliation, Auscontact acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respects to their elders past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here today. Today's webinar will run for approximately 60 minutes, and during that time, with the help of our very special guest today, Michael, we hope to spark your interest and engage you in conversation, as well as provide some ideas that you might be able to take back to your respective businesses. To round off the session, we'll have a Q&A at the end of the webinar where you can ask questions. So I'm Fran Southwood. I am the CEO of Auscontact, and I'll be your moderator for today. While we're waiting on everybody joining us, we might take the time to just run through some housekeeping with you. The session today, we're hoping you'll actually interact with us. We want to maximise the benefit that you can take away from the session. There's lots of information to hear, and you'll hear some really good insights in relation to the data that's collected. But there's no need to take too many notes, because we'll actually provide you with a recording of the webinar and any slides that are available for it. So to interact with us, we'd like you to use the Q&A button on the control panel. You can ask questions, or you can make comments for Michael or myself from time to time. And I'll read those as we go, and depending on where we're at within the presentation, we'll either throw them in if they're relevant or time sensitive, or we'll keep them and have them for a session at the end where we'll do Q&A. But type them as you go so we don't forget them. If you're listening through headphones or speakers and experience any issues with your internet connection, note that on the control panel you can click raise your hand and one of the team will rush and help you with that. Or you can look back at that registration email that you got, and all of the relevant phone numbers and everything, access codes are all in there. So we'll use that, jump on using that if you need to. So I know many of you are familiar with asking questions, but let's try out the Q&A button on the control panel, just in case, with a very important question from me. And my question for all of you today is, where are we holding our national award event this Friday evening? The ultimate celebration for Auscontact. Where's that going to be held this Friday? Hopefully, some people might know. Anybody? Anybody know where we're having it? Melbourne, yes, thank you. Definitely right. We are having it in Melbourne. You could have all guessed. I'm hoping that's not an indication that you're all shy and not going to answer any questions or ask us any questions as we work through the session today. Because there's plenty of information that I'm sure you're keen to hear about. So I'll move on now. I'm going to introduce our speaker for today, who might be new to some of you from our audience, but I know there's a few who've heard Michael talk before about conversational AI. Now, Michael Bradley is the Partner Director of APAC at Cognigy. Welcome, Michael. I know you've got a wealth of experience and knowledge to share with the group today, and can't wait to hear more about it. So I'll hand over to you.
Thanks, Fran, and thank you all for joining us this afternoon, or still this morning if you're up north. I really appreciate it. As Fran said, we've had some interactions before with Auscontact, and hopefully with a few of you through some of our roundtables, and we've had a discussion about conversational AI a few times now. But hopefully what we'll do today is dive a little deeper into what conversational AI actually is, what it means, and how it can be applicable to the modern contact center. As Fran mentioned, we do want this to be interactive by nature. We do try to keep our sessions a little bit more casual. I don't want to be a talking head at you for the next 35, 45 minutes. If you do have anything that you want to ask in relation to one of the slides or something that just pops into your mind, raise your hand or throw a question into the Q&A section. And Fran will interrupt me at that point, and we'll table the question as it lands, rather than waiting till the end and then it's out of context. Other than that, I hope you enjoy the session, and we'll reconvene towards the end. So with that, I wanted to start off with framing things up a little bit with a quote from Sybil Sternzik, which says, "The way that your employees feel is the way that your customers will feel. And if your employees don't feel value, neither will your customers." And the reason this is important is because I do feel like, the contact center is often framed up potentially in a negative light to what it actually should be. And that's generally because it's seen as a cost center, not a value center. But at the end of the day, they are the ones that always are put forward to service, particularly the most critical or most pressing questions or problems that your customers have. And the way that that's received and the way that they're serviced through that interaction is the way that the customer sentiment will last in relation to your organization. So how can we empower those employees to be their best selves and to best serve the customers in those situations? We'll dive into that a little bit through this session. Before we get started though, just to frame things up, we've got a quick poll question. How familiar are you with conversational AI and how it can help the contact center? Now, conversational AI, for those of you who don't know, is the way in which we humanize a computer or computer-based interaction with people, i.e., how can we make a computer more like a person-to-person type experience? That's what conversational AI aims to achieve, to a degree, right? We obviously don't want it taking over people and doing all those other scary things that are pitched in the singularity. It's not about that. It's really about people empowerment. So how can we empower a computer to best service you as a person? Give that a few seconds. Cool. There we go. We don't have any experts, but we've got a few who are aware and that have dabbled in the technology before. And that's good. I think that sort of level of understanding is exactly what we anticipated within this presentation. So hopefully we can get you guys nudged up a level in the next 30 minutes. Before we get started into conversational AI and the broader conversation, I'll just give you a little bit of context as to what Cognigy is and why we're in front of you today. Cognigy was founded about 5 years ago by those three gentlemen up on the screen there. And it actually initially started as a chat technology for conversational learning inside of toys. And if you think about it, they tried to take this all the way back from a natural language understanding perspective to better serve the way that children develop linguistically. As they were kind of toying around with the idea and developing the technology, Phil was doing some research into the modern enterprise, contact centers, and customer experience technologies, and realized that this technology was actually more broadly applicable in the business scenario, right? How can we make sure that there is a human interaction with computer-based technologies that still is at the level of understanding that we need it to be serviceable? So with their combined knowledge in enterprise software and communication, they built Cognigy for what it is known for us today as an AI-first self-service automation solution for large enterprise, especially in the contact center. And what does that mean? It means that we've built the world's leading contact center orchestration platform powered by conversational AI. So I want you to remember that, that point there. Let's step back a little bit. The reason why we've done this is because we recognize that customer experience as a whole has a problem. And don't take our word for it. As you can see in the top right there, this is actually research that has been done by Deloitte over the last 10 years across the entire customer experience spectrum. And they've found kind of a real core issue with the way that the modern business is adopting solutions or customer-centric solutions. The first one being that there is no shared strategy across all facets of that customer experience, right? They've broken it down into those three core areas: customer experience, the CX, the agent experience, i.e. the contact center, and then the operational experience. How does the technology underpin those two parts of the customer experience journey? So as a result of that, there is no centralized location for the end-to-end customer journey, particularly from a data and reporting perspective. If you have a fragmented organizational structure inside of your business, that means, a CX team is going to go out and procure their own solutions based on their problem statement. The contact center will do the same, right? They're going to figure out what the best solution is to empower their agents to solve their problems. And then operationally speaking, they've got to find some sort of point of contact across those two platforms to surface data and then present data back to the organization to understand how that journey is performing against their problem statement. Some technologies are purchased and overlapping for some channels, but again, they're done so in isolation, right? So you have digital channels that take it to a degree perhaps a little bit too far to where the contact center needs to pick it up and run with it. So triaging perhaps isn't working as best it should. And then as a result, the contact center decisions are made in isolation from digital channels. And we're seeing that as a major pressure point with so many organizations that we're talking to, is that, digital have gone one way and adopted a full-fledged solution without talking to the contact center. And so by the time the customer gets there, they're either at an escalation point or an urgency point that's further away than what they could have been, or they're actually not solving the customer's problems, and therefore they're coming significantly more frustrated than they would have otherwise been had they gone straight to the contact center. And of course, there's again another spectrum there of different journeys and problems there, but that's kind of what we're seeing from that fragmentation internally. What does this mean for the customer? There's constant repetition across each channel, so having to re-identify themselves, restate their problem or query, and they're starting to get a little bit frustrated. As a result, they circumvent those digital channels and they call anyway. So we're not actually taking call volumes and issues or even simplistic queries away from the contact center. We're actually adding volumes to the contact center. And as you can imagine, there's a variety of issues that comes along with that. And if they're not getting serviced in the way that they should, i.e. they're taking too long, or they're having too much repetition, or the channels aren't working, they leave. What we're finding these days is a bad customer experience results in an erosion of loyalty and therefore switching. So bad customer experience, bad brand. And that's the problem that a lot of organizations are facing these days, particularly with the current pressures as a result of COVID. So then, of course, what does this mean for the modern contact center? Well, system proliferation, or the amount of solutions that the agent needs to leverage in order to service those customers is getting out of control. We were at the Contact Center Summit a couple of weeks ago, and Melanie Steenbach said up on stage, the amount of systems and processes that we have, we could justify having nearly 8 screens per agent for our contact center workers, which is crazy, right? That essentially looks like a control center, not a contact center. So it's getting out of control. As a result, the average handling time is significantly increasing. And at the start of COVID, we saw average handling times go up from 3 to 6 minutes to closer to 10+ minutes. I think that nowadays those AHTs are much higher than that. 10 minutes would be almost a goal for us at the moment. But that's what's happening, right? The call volumes contributing to the average handling time and waiting times, plus the amount of context switching and app proliferation that your agents have to deal with, means that AHT is naturally increasing. And of course, as a result of that, agent attrition is extremely high right now. You're in a constant state of enablement. The agent realizes what they're in for. They jump ship because it's an unsatisfying journey for them, and then you start again and again and again, which of course is crazy. So we're starting to do extreme things like increase our base wages by $7,000 in some instances just to keep them there. So all of these are just constantly adding to the modern contact center woes. But there's a dream, right? We've all got a dream. What if each one of those 3 facets of the organization, digital, contact center, operational, came together and developed a unified strategy, worked collectively, and spent more of their day putting the person that they all serve first? What would that look like? I'll give you an idea. We've spoken to a few customers, just a typical consumer, and said, well, what would your idyllic customer journey or customer interaction look like? Should you, I don't know, renew your insurance? Now, sort of 6 things that were top of mind for these folks. They want to use their medium of choice, WhatsApp, SMS, Telegram, Facebook Messenger, those sorts of things that they interact with their friends on a daily basis. They don't want to change to a different mechanism. They want to use what they're familiar with. So how do we provide the medium of choice for our customers to interact with us? How do we make that asynchronous? Again, when you're talking to your family, you're not talking to them for a concentrated hour. You don't want to do that. That sounds like hell. You want to spread that journey out over the course of 24 hours, perhaps. So when can I use my medium of choice? When I choose to, when I'm on my way for school drop-off, or when I'm on the bus, or when I'm at work, or when I'm getting my coffee. Those little pockets of time, that spare time that I can do these things like personal admin, are when I want to do them. I don't want to have to block out a portion of my day. How can we make that experience unified across each one of those channels? We've got to remember that some people might initiate a conversation via chat, but they might jump on their laptop later and open up the web browser. How do we make sure there's continuity between those otherwise seemingly disparate experiences? And then more importantly, we wrap that in a bow. How do we make that contextual? How do we make that efficient? And how do we get them from where they are to where they need to be quickly? So it needs to be effective. Well, this is an idea. This is like a higher level architecture of what you would actually have to undertake as an organization to do that. So up the top there, you've got your different contact center channels, you've got your different chat mediums, and your enterprise tools in order to communicate. From there, you need to develop an orchestration layer. So how do we unify each one of those channels? Of course, you need to build teams around BA, customer experience, and then development in order to do that. Enhance that with NLU and some BI tools as well. And then surface all of the customer data at the right time in order to understand who that customer is and personalize that experience to a degree. It's a hell of an undertaking, right? We found that it takes about 3 years for a modern organization to build this experience, and it comes with a lot of pain points and a lot of troubles. You're interacting with different vendors all the time. The solution's not going to be one-dimensional. Like I said, you've got those 3 different organizations within your business. You've got to bring that all together and then develop a solution that makes sense for the customer. It can come at a significant cost, and the timeline for delivering something like this could be 3 to 5 years. Doesn't have to be that way though, and we'll go into that in a second. Before I do, we got our second poll question. I've just gone through a few problem statements across the customer experience, the contact center, and the enterprise from an architecture perspective. Does this resonate with you? Are you finding the same things are occurring inside your organization as well? Throw those answers up in a second. Just give everyone a minute to answer. And the results are pretty polarizing. 100% of people said yes, which is great, right? I mean, I don't think it's new knowledge, right? What we're doing is surfacing a lot of pain here. You're all very well aware of the issues that you're facing, particularly within your roles. But this is more validation, right? The idea that this is a journey inside of all organizations, the fact that we're not alone in what we're experiencing. I think that, again, from the roundtables and even some of the events that we've been attending recently, there's almost this, I don't want to say shame, but, hesitancy to sort of say, hey, I'm actually struggling with this. I don't know where to go. I don't know how to get buy-in. I don't know where to start. I don't know what, tools, mechanisms, technologies to use. How do I get there? Where do I need to go? But, when you go to a conference, you hear about all these dream scenarios of people that have implemented, the world's best customer experience. And you think, my God, I'm a long way from that. In actual fact, I would say 80% of people within this industry are in the same boat. They don't know where to start. They've still got those same problems. They know that they need to fix it. They just don't know how or where to start. But let's give you an idea on that. All right. We conducted some research nearly 12 months ago through First Point Consulting about the state of conversational AI and chat-based technologies as a whole. And as you can see from the findings down here, a large portion of people believe that chat-based technologies and conversational-based technologies, even AI to a degree, will relieve a lot of those pressures, both from a CX perspective, but more importantly, from a contact center perspective, right? If we can remove and automate a lot of those inbound inquiries from the contact center and move them over to a digital mechanism that gets them to a point of triage or just contains them and passes them off, then that reduces the woes on the contact center as a whole, and more importantly, to the agents. So how do we do that? That diagram that I showed you before that shows a lot of complication, you can find orchestration tools that do a lot of that heavy lifting, right? You don't need to go out and build a large engineering effort behind the contact center or CX technology stack. You don't need to go out and build teams around each one of those core functions, operations, CX, and contact center, in order to build a unified experience. If you find the right automation tool that already caters to the majority of that architecture, right? Like if they can plug and play, there's a variety of extensions, you have the ability to build automations within that experience. What that means is you can have each one of those organizations go out and find the right tool for them based on their problem statement and plug that into the orchestration tool and have the automation run in unison with that technology. And so you can sort of see here, I mean, this is the Cognigy example, of course, but we've gone out and built all of those extensions for each one of those chat mediums. So you don't need to go and do that, right? It's out of the box. We've got in NLU here, but of course we actually plug into Dialogflow and IBM's Watson and even Rasa, if that's what you prefer to play with from a conversational AI perspective. The most important thing, right, is database technologies, surfacing the right data at the right time and allowing that to create the right level of personalization, because you don't want to go too far with personalization, right? It needs to just be, once you've identified them, you've got first name and you've got any prior context, any conversations or outstanding support tickets or bills or anything like that they have, right? So that data at the right place at the right time in that conversation needs to be there too. So all of that can be done through the right orchestration tool. And then you can start to look at automation as a result of that. But getting it all tied together is the first step. Once you've done that, then you can start your automation process, right? So once you've got each one of those technologies and each one of those organizations singing from the same hymn book, we can start looking at the contact center and saying, okay, what are those low value tasks that our agents are doing that we could probably move towards a digital automation strategy? So as you can see here, we've done that with one of our customers, Eon, and we started moving any invoice queries away from the contact center and into a digital experience. And they've actually gone to the degree of automating 70% of their basic inquiries. And what that means is the remaining or the residual 30% is handled by the agent. They're high priority or high value tasks. Agents can focus on sales. They can focus on, walking a customer back from a cliff if they're frustrated. They can focus on their customer service from a person-to-person perspective, and building that trust and brand equity. All the other stuff that people want to just, almost do a lookup, can be done through automation. It frees up the time and, starts to remove those AHT and volume-based issues that our contact center is experiencing. You can then go to another degree with agent assist. So digital assistants can work in conjunction with the agent to not only provide customer experience continuity, but to then also start surfacing that information for the agent so we can start removing some of those screens that they have to use or some of those solutions that they have to constantly be monitoring. If the customer asks the right question and your conversational AI bot can understand what they're saying in the context of the intent, that information can be surfaced for the agent in real time, and the agent has that at their fingertips to then answer the customer's queries, again, reducing AHT. Super important. And like I said, we've done that with customer Lufthansa. As you can see there, they're handling over nearly 1 million conversations a month, both through digital and to the contact center. But their AHT is so low as a result, they can handle those volumes. It's fantastic. I wanted to show you what that could look like. So I've got a very short demo here because we've built something from, just a billing inquiry. Oh, sorry, this is an insurance example here, where we've leveraged our agent assist technology to help the agent handle an inbound call from a customer. I'll show you what that looks like.
Hi there, welcome to Insure. How can I help?
Hi, I need to submit a claim. Can you help me?
Sure, what kind of damage are we talking about?
My car body is damaged because I hit another vehicle.
Okay, I'm sorry to hear that. I hope you're okay. When did this happen?
Yeah, I'm okay. The accident happened on the 6th of August when I was in Paris.
Okay, and can you give me the license number for your vehicle?
Sure, it's DTME386.
Perfect. Well, that's all I need today. So I'll submit the claim for you and you'll hear back from us in the next few days.
Amazing. Thanks for your help.
You're welcome. Have a great day. Goodbye.
We can then start to take things a degree further. When we start to build dashboards, we start to reduce a lot of those peripheral or context switching problems from a technology proliferation perspective. The idea being that if we can create a single pane of glass based on the customer's intent with your organization, when they come to you, they've got a query, they've been through the digital journey, and they want to speak to an agent, that whole journey should, in theory, follow them. And once it gets to the agent, all the right information based on where they've been should be surfaced at that time. So what you can do here is you can create a, almost iframe window inside the agent's desktop, which creates a flexible and customizable experience for them. They've got each one of those little, call them widgets, and each one of them has an important piece of data. Those adaptive cards can then pop up and change based on the conversation you're having in real time with that customer as well. So no longer are you going through and switching screens or looking for data out of a particular database based on their query. We're not having long pause times where they're saying, hold please, while I look something up. All of that's just popping up in front of the agent on those adaptable cards. And it can be any type of information as well. So rich media, maps, articles, service tickets, even sentiment can all be there. There's another example, we can see some of those rich media examples there. They've got, diagrams and maps and even, inventory lists based out of perhaps even a ServiceNow or the like integration. So it enables the agent to be really responsive and really speedy in servicing that customer. But this is something that isn't often adopted in the contact center. Those technologies are not there because we haven't thought about the entire journey holistically. We're not thinking and we're not talking as one unified organization. We're talking in isolation. Once we do that, once we bring these tools together, we can start creating experiences for our agents, such as the one up on the screen here. So finally, that brings us to our third poll question. Do you believe automation driven by conversational AI will help solve some of your problems? just allow another minute for everyone to respond quickly. And the results are, the majority are looking at this as a future-proof state. You know, I imagine that most of you are on that where do we begin journey, and this would be something that you're considering once you get the opportunities to bring that conversation to a more centralized degree. That's great to hear. 20% of you said we're on it. That's pretty exciting. And then we do have a not right now, which is absolutely okay. I mean, like I said, this is a journey, right? So there's varying degrees of where people are from an automation and conversational design perspective. But I mean, of course, this is why we're here, right? We're happy to go on that journey with you and hopefully help in some way when you're ready. So some takeaways from today I want to leave you guys with. You know, we spoke about this a little bit. You know, what we've seen in the industry is that you guys are not alone, right? There's a spectrum of people that are on this journey. There are organizations like Westpac is a really good example, who have been playing with conversational AI for a very, very long time. So their customer experience is right at the tip of that iceberg or the end of that spectrum. But then there are others who just do not know where to begin. They're at the infancy of that journey, and they're just trying to understand what are the solutions that are out there, where do I begin, and how do I get the right buy-in from our teams so that we can begin building the best customer experience. The second thing is there is a solution, right? You don't need to be scrambling around trying to figure out what to next, how are we going to make this happen? You know, how do we get the budget for the headcount so that we can build a team of engineers and solution designers and conversational experts around fixing our customer experience and our contact center woes. There's technologies out there that can do this and do a lot of the heavy lifting for you. And finally, let's work together to turn our agents into superheroes. Again, our agents are one of the most important aspects of our modern business. People still yearn for human interaction, and particularly when it comes down to certain sensitive issues that they just really want to hear a voice behind the organization. We need to give them the tools, the power, and the capacity to make that the best customer experience possible. And that's where you start getting brand equity, trust, and more importantly, recurring customer business as well. You build that loyalty up. And this is what that means, right? Let's automate a lot of those low value tasks, those things that the agents just get frustrated with, and they can focus on the more humanistic elements of why they're there and what they can do for the customer. Because every interaction with a customer is an opportunity, so we have to make every interaction count. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael. Lots of information in there, and probably a couple of points I wouldn't mind sort of chatting to you. And obviously, if anyone's got any questions they want to raise, put them in the QA box or the chat box, either one, and we'll get to them as we go through. Michael, you talked a lot about, and particularly at the end there, you touched on that human side, and still seeing that need from a lot of customers, regardless of vertical, that actually still want to talk to a person. So, I think we've shared before we heard not that long ago, someone used the term digital by default and human where it matters. Yeah. And I think sometimes the real challenge is this push-pull almost that says it's kind of all or nothing. But certainly what you've shown us today gives us some real insights into, there's a real opportunity with some of those low value, high volume often, interactions that we perform for customers, and how can we actually automate and streamline and, really drive efficiencies there. But actually it's about then making space, isn't it? We can, I think one of your slides showed, some big reductions in wait times and things like that. I think there's also some danger in it, because I think the more we get rid of that, low value interaction, quite often what you'll see in an organization is AHT will go up, right? Because we've got rid of all of those short, quick, lower value interactions. But probably where your tech and some of the conversation here today can then actually provide more support is really reducing those things that add no value to the conversation, like your hold times, your search for your agents. Really I almost call it that predictive scripting. It assists when they're actually in real time sort of challenged by some of those questions, because sometimes if the sell is about AHT, it can be quite dangerous. It still has to connect more broadly to, there are other values here that this will actually drive as an immediate saver to your customer experience and journey map, etc. But sometimes AHT is a really interesting one, because if you get rid of all those quick calls, actually that takes away your low averages and sometimes can see AHT do different things. So I think it's also about those things that are no value. So, I don't know how many times you've heard, do you mind if I just put you on hold? And if we can reduce some of those instances, it certainly makes a difference to that customer experience for sure.
Oh, exactly. I mean, and you should always say that you got to take a holistic picture of those stats as well. AHT, like you said, is one, but NPS and those CSAT surveys post conversation with your agent should also tell what their sentiment was after that conversation, whether it was 10 minutes or 50. If it was a valuable or meaningful conversation and service the customer's needs, the AHT to a degree is relevant, right? Like a sales call, for instance, if someone's switching mobile plans and just wants to talk that through with your agent, shouldn't be a quick call. That's a valuable call because you're creating revenue for the business. You don't want to get them off the phone quickly. You want to work it through. But the low value stuff like ID and V, you should automate that element of it.
Absolutely. I've got a question here from William. What are some of the common mistakes you see when organizations try to implement their own solution? That's a really good question, actually.
It is, and it's also a bit of a how long's a piece of string answer. I think the most common thing would be the over-engineering of customer journeys. What we try and do from a solution provider perspective is give guidance on where we see best practices from a conversational design point of view. How many deep, how many wide would you go with certain intents? How many pathways does that customer need in order to get where they need to go? What does triaging look like? When you try and do that yourself, you often think about what you believe the customer wants out of that journey and where you think they should land, rather than taking a step back from that customer's experience and sort of saying, well, what do we think they need and how can we get them to where they need to get to as quickly as possible? And that's how you increase customer satisfaction through those experience journeys. I would also say that it's a noisy space, the contact center and CX space, right? Like it's a very popular place for technology companies to play in right now. And so as a result, you can get pulled in various different directions from the different solution providers. So you can also go down a rabbit warren of saying, well, this solution, is an all-in-one, and we're going to dive deeply into this particular tech stack and build everything there. Sometimes that's not the right way, depending on what kind of organization you run and what you want that customer's experience to be. I would take a step back and say, what problem am I trying to solve? How can I get the customer to a solution or resolve for that problem? And what are the right technologies that are going to help them get there? And if you need to cherry pick a few and Frankenstein them, that's absolutely okay. If that's what you need to do from a best in breed perspective to build the right solution, you should do that. But just know that there has to be a mechanism to tie that all together. And I think that's where also organizations can fall off a bit. But I think we put a lot of faith in open API infrastructure these days, and more often than not, it doesn't work because, again, you don't know who's pulling and pushing the data from which direction. So you can grab tools and services that make sure that is a continuous and seamless customer experience with the right tools that you've chosen as an organization to get your customer there.
It's interesting because you do pick up on the point about channel of choice, but sometimes I think organizations have a really, really firm view of what their preference is, and sometimes there's a bit of projection. So I think some important, components is really taking that step back and really understanding your client. So talking to your customer, recognizing what it is that they actually are after. We've got a really interesting question here from Raymond. Is the conventional assumption that customers prefer to speak to a live agent now outdated? If conversational AI can provide a more efficient resolution to the customer's query, provided it's accurate, and customers can communicate whilst multitasking and do it with less latency. Great question. It's an interesting one.
Good one. Loaded question. I like it.
Yeah.
I don't think that the idea of speaking to a live agent is outdated. I think it's, to your point, Fran, conversational or digital by design, personal when it matters, or that kind of resonates here, because there's points in time or particular problems where customers feel more comfortable speaking to a bot versus, or a virtual assistant versus a human. There's some interesting research around, financial based queries for digital experience, where customers actually feel better talking about particularly debt, but anything financial related, because it's, it's stigmatized a little bit with a virtual assistant than they actually do with a human, particularly in a debt scenario. If you think about, oh, I'm late paying my bill, you don't want to talk to another person about that because you inherently feel judged. So it's much easier to have that conversation, can I defer paying my bill for 2 weeks with a virtual assistant? And as long as it's within the parameters of their capability to say, absolutely, let's set up a debt arrangement for you, you can do that. And the customer feels grateful that they haven't had to have that conversation. But when you're talking about taking out a large insurance policy, let's say it's home and contents, and you want to make sure that you've got everything absolutely covered, you might have gone through a complete form, you might have gone through the conversational journey with the virtual agent. But just to be absolutely sure you've got peace of mind, you want to qualify that with a live agent. That's the handoff part where people can say, okay, I want to just make sure I've got everything right. Can I speak to a person now? Yes, the conversation continues into the contact center with that individual, and they've got all the history there. And they can say, yeah, we can verify that you've done everything correctly. Would you like to proceed with that policy? Yes, you can close that out again via the virtual agent. So that agent has only been there when they absolutely had to be, not through the duration of the journey. So there's different ways that you can leverage both technologies, and it's all relative to, one, the problem that you're trying to solve, but two, the type of business that you are will also determine, which technology or which mechanism is best suited to your customer's experience.
No, I think that's right. I think too, different customers still want different things, and it might be a point in time. And I think it goes back to the importance of having, whatever channel you're offering is actually really effective and as streamlined and as efficient as it can be. Because, my view would be customers unilaterally are time poor. And I think we've joked about this before. Nobody wakes up in the morning with a deep desire to call a particular organisation. Maybe they do for some things, but more often than not, you want it to be seamless and easy. And it, if you think some of your regulatory partners, some of your, you talked about debt, no one wants to do that intentionally with a person where they can avoid it. There'll be some that want that assurance, so do actually look to, have that human component, just reassure them that they've done things right. But it is a fine balance.
Yeah, absolutely.
Have you got any other questions that people wanted to throw into the conversation today? I know, Michael, you've talked about a couple of, clients that you're working with, and we saw some interesting examples there of where it's working well. Obviously, you're seeing more and more starting to get onto this, journey, trying to actually create that ability to streamline and connect. Particularly where they're seeing clients having to move between channels and that handoff. I think the research is really loud and clear about people wanting the handoff to be more effective. And that comes from having the information that actually passes on nicely. So you're seeing really good success with that in the examples you raised with us today. And we're seeing that as a pretty standard position from customers.
Yeah, I think so. I think, it's the starting block that's the hardest part. I think we had our friends from Westpac actually attend one of our lunch and learns, and they were saying that, when you launch, expect to fail. As the one message that Nick had for the entire table was, the first iteration of whatever you do from a customer experience perspective is probably not going to work. And that's okay, because what you're going to learn out of that experience will then enable you to iterate and continuously improve and optimize that experience over time, and start taking different use cases and automating those scenarios. And then from there, you can start building a holistic picture of that customer's journey and start making, agents and virtual assistants work in harmony. And that was pretty cool. I think we all knew what happened with Telstra when they launched their first chatbot back in the day. That was a colossal disaster, right? But what was problematic there is that we were in this era of digitization, and particularly from an AI perspective, everyone's thinking, okay, well, this is the part where computers take over our lives. That's not the case. It doesn't need to be full-fledged like that. If you go in with an open mind and understanding that these things are a journey, you will get there in the end. That starting block is so important, though. Just begin. Start small, figure it out, learn, pivot quickly, optimize, and scale.
Yep.
Is kind of what you need to do.
Fail fast is a good one, isn't it?
Exactly.
I've got another question here from William, and it's specifically referencing multilingual operations. So does the AI need to learn for each language, or can it translate across languages?
It could do both. Yeah, I mean, once you have a language model behind the scenes that works, the translation piece is somewhat seamless these days. I mean, we've seen some examples of customers. Actually, the Lufthansa example is a good one here, because naturally airlines have different customers from different backgrounds and cultures and things like that booking through their VA all the time. We've got two scenarios there. The one, from a digital perspective, we can translate within 100 or 100 plus different languages in real time, and it's pretty accurate. And so language translation these days isn't really an issue. I think where people see a sticking point is, when there's real-time translation to the agent that doesn't speak the same language. But again, technology is so good these days where they can translate in real time from, let's say, Cantonese to English and back again. So the agent can actually respond in their native tongue to the person in theirs, which is pretty cool as well. So multilingual capabilities in digital experience, I don't think something that you need to, it's not going to keep you up at night, let's put it that way. So if you pick the right solution that has those capabilities, then you'll be fine.
Perfect. Okay, any other questions in relation to anything? Or are there any other points you wanted to add before we wrap up, Michael?
No, I don't think so. I think the only thing I would say, these days is there's been interesting examples and conversations had around how on earth do we bring each one of these facets of the organization internally together, because that conversation is extraordinarily difficult. And the head of contact center, or I think he's the director of contact center at NAB, Mark said it quite nicely, where he's actually going and forcing his executives to undertake each one of the experiences they build to understand what the problems are and what solutions that they're actually proposing to build. Because most, particularly from an executive level, I mean, from a banking perspective, he was essentially saying, when was the last time you applied for a credit card? Because once you've done that 3 or 5 years ago, you don't need to do it again. But they're constantly trying to service customers that are doing that on a daily basis. So he's getting them to actually sit down and experience what they're building and what those solutions that they're proposing are, and getting executive buy-in to bring the entire organization together from a customer experience and journey perspective. And I think that's really interesting. It's if you can do that, if you can get unanimous buy-in across the organization, inherently you'll be significantly more successful from a customer-facing perspective. So that would be my walkaway. If you can try and build a unified front from an executive level and then from a business unit perspective, that will give you a fantastic foundation for success when you're embarking on your customer experience journey.
That's really, really good process to actually get the execs not only dealing with the current state, but actually also then stepping through what the proposed solution is. So often we get part of that a little bit wackadoodle. We've got another good question here. And this is in relation to success metrics. So is there a better success metric for conversational AI than containment without the involvement of a live agent?
I would, containment. Containment, I think, is one of those like ugly cousins that you need to acknowledge, but you don't want to talk about. The containment, I don't know if containment should be a success metric, to be fair, because containment means that you only want them to be bucketed in one place and you never want them to leave, right? But what if they need to? From a conversational AI perspective, we often look at intents, successful intents. Because from a conversational AI perspective, if you can understand why that customer is interacting with you as early as possible, you'll get them to where they need to be quicker. And where they need to be is dependent on that intent. So containing them in a bucket is perhaps not the right idea, but once you understand why they're interacting with you, getting them to where they need to be as quickly as possible should be the success metric. So successful intent identification is a metric that we use and we try to push. And then I would say speed to closure of that intent would probably be another complementary statistic that you could leverage there as well. Again, if you've figured out that the customer sentiment is frustrated and irritable, and they've come to you with a financial query, you probably have identified why they're there and how urgently that needs to be rounded off. And you probably don't want to funnel them down a digital experience. You need to get that off to a person that can also, recognize and empathize with what that customer is going through and resolve that as quickly as possible. But again, the tech infrastructure behind it can help that agent do that quicker. So again, that speed and that intent analysis is critical to that success.
Yeah, I think that's actually really important. Containment in the wrong box is, depends what perspective you're calling success from. From a client, I would challenge if I'm in the wrong place. Containment's not necessarily going to tell you I'm happy or not. But yeah, excellent. Oh, we've had some really good questions there. So thank you for those. As I said earlier, we will be sending out the recording. And we'll also send some slides out from Michael, and we'll make sure that link is available so you can actually see and hear the example that he shared with us earlier today. Thank you everybody for coming along. I thought it was a great session, and there's so much to learn around conversational AI. And I think, for me, Michael, a real takeaway there was you just got to start somewhere. Start and have a look and think about your customer journey and how you can actually impact it. Thanks to those who asked questions. We look forward to seeing you again at one of our future sessions. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.